What up, y'all? It's your boy OSGOE, One Sir Grove of EVT and England. How y'all doing? Thanks for tuning in. If you are a fan of this show, and if you support this show, we 495 support you. Yo, so we are in record mode. We have been recording new 495/L4 projects. And man, we're on fucking point. This shit has come together just as we had designed it to come together. And now that we have our co-located multiple studio locations coast to coast, upgraded with all the latest software, all the latest tools. Look, man, some people are still recording in the dinosaur days. They really are. Listen, man, we as a rap group, consortium, organization, because 495 and L4 is an alliance between two crews, actually. And some of the members are actually members of both organizations, like Rosendo, for example. He's 495 and L4. So, point is, as well as Mr. Broccoli is 495 and L4. I'm not a member of L4, I'm 495. So, the structure that we have now is such that it took us some years of working with technology, with trial and error, with different types of tools, techniques, experiments, because we experimented. It was all experimentation. Now keep in mind, for the official record, and so that folks understand, some are new to 495L4 in terms of fans and supporters, and they don't know the backstory that is the history. By the way, none of these shows, most of these shows, some of them, I guess, are not scripted. None of this is scripted. This is a mobile podcast. I'm traveling state to state, city to city. That's what we do, man. Coast to coast, overseas. So in that, the new structure is different from how it used to be. We used to record in garages. We also recorded a long time ago in home studios, like the whole basement setup. I used to record at my grandmother's estate, her property, her house, before she passed, when I lived with her when I was a teenager, and then into my college years, off and on. I wasn't always at Grandma G's. I was we call my grandmother, my neighborhood, refer to my grandmother as Grandma G. So we used to record in garages. We used to record in basements. We used to record in home studios. At the same time, we also recorded in top-of-the-line professional studios. We have recorded in studios that Microsoft has used to record some of its CD-ROM projects. I've talked about this on podcasts before, so there's no reason for me to go into much detail here. Nonetheless, back in the 1990s, we were recording in studios paying $75 to $100+ an hour. Now keep in mind, for us, that was a lot of money, and for a lot of people, that was a lot of money back then. So we bankrolled studio recording sessions at $75 to $100+ an hour, and we recorded in top-of-the-line studios out on the West Coast. It just depended, man, like on how we were feeling. You know, if we wanted to record some underground shit, then we'd fucking just record in a garage, like, you know, where we had a setup. We had studios all over the place, man. I had a trap house, you know what I'm saying? Trap spot, statute of limitations, man. It's been over 25 years and shit. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day. And, man, I was privileged to be able to have a home at age 19, you know what I'm saying, that my family owned, where I was the caretaker of the property, man. I was the property manager because my parents, they weren't around. They were out of state and out of country because they were military. So I had a spot, man, where my childhood friends from elementary school, from junior high school, from high school, you know what I'm saying? They came and they lived with me, and I also lived with them. So we had all these different houses, man. We had all these different places. We had all these different spots. And we were young ballers, so we had cars. You know what I'm saying? Sports cars, you know what I'm saying? Places to stay whenever we needed, you know what I'm saying? Cars parked around, you know, town with keys hidden, you know what I'm saying, in case we need to get in the ride. You know what I'm saying? These are things that we owned. None of this shit was stolen. We own this shit. You know what I'm saying? So we were young fucking ballers, man, back when marijuana was illegal. You know what I'm saying? When fucking marijuana was illegal. Imagine that shit. A time when marijuana was fucking illegal. And I'm not going to go into details, man, but I mean, shit, it was the West Coast, so there were all kinds of drugs. You know what I'm saying? And different types of like activities, black market, illicit, and I'm not glorifying any of it, and I'm not saying that we were involved in anything outside selling weed. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that back in the day, man, there was a lot of shit going on the West Coast. A lot of crime, a lot of drug dealing, a lot of fucking guns, a lot of this and that. You know what I'm saying? High-speed chases, you name it. We've talked about this. You know what it's about. So that's when we went from being younger than that, like young teenagers, to like being teenagers like nearing 18 years of age, where we were adults. We started to have not just like some little equipment here and there. We started to step it up. And we just kept investing and buying more and more technology. And back then, shit we had was state of the art too. Because keep in mind, we had our own stuff at home and like at the different places that we had, you know what I'm saying, the different garages that we had access to, you know, storage facilities, different homes, different whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because we had shit all around town and in different towns. So, being that we were underground operators and we had an alliance where we could go from this city to that city, and we knew someone in each one of these different cities, and we could stay here, we could stay there. We had these types of, you know what I'm saying, systems. We could go and record here and there. You know what I'm saying? People could come over, you know what I'm saying, more where we were, and they could record with us. They could stay with us. So that's how we had the network set up. We just kept stepping it up more and more and more. There reached a time, man, when we went mainstream. We're mainstream now. But there was a time back when we were younger, in our early 20s, where we went from being underground to being mainstream. We put out some mainstream projects. We hit number 5 in the United States online at mp3.com. I've talked about this before. We had tracks on the internet neck and neck with Jay-Z. That's real shit. That's world history. My homeboy, YC1, aka Young Chili, he had a song called Dandruff on My Shoulder with his cousin Little Noopy. Little Noopy and I, we used to hit the studio all the time with Young Chili, Little Noopy, myself, me, all of us, man. We used to hit the studio with our respective crews. Young Chili, you know what I'm saying, it's no secret, man. Young Chili comes from, you know what I'm saying, a Crip gang. I come from a Bloods gang. When I was younger, Chili was a little bit older than me. You know what I'm saying? Not much, but a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And he was already going out to all these different places when I was young. And then when I got a little bit older, you know what I'm saying, and Chili started coming around a little bit more, we started to like exchange information, and we started to work together, because when I started to go out into like, you know what I'm saying, Seattle, from like the EVT and whatnot, you know what I'm saying, we used to record in the Central District. I've talked about this before, at a studio called Dark Set. And Dark Set were some older dudes, like even older, you know what I'm saying, than Chili. Like I said, Chili just, man, not even that much older than me. We're close in terms of like our ages. But these other dudes were older dudes. And they'd been in the game, man, for a long time, like way before us. And they were legendary in Seattle. And they'd come up to a club that we weren't old enough to get into. And they saw in the EVT, like 26 miles, I'm saying, north of Seattle. They came up to the EVT and they saw us rapping on the corner right outside the club. And they're like, yo, let us hear that flow. So we just kept spitting rhymes, you know? You know, fucking 495, Deep in Everett type shit. And they was like, yo, that shit's dope. Here's a business card, man. We want to fuck with y'all. So we went down to their spot in Seattle. You know what I'm saying? They gave us a good, you know what I'm saying? They gave us a good fucking rate. You know what I'm saying? Like on some top of the line studio. You know what I'm saying? Robert Redwine, he was the producer at the time. He worked on albums, you know what I'm saying, that have already, you know, I'm talking about ranked. And, you know, so for us, man, back then that was a dream come true. You know, those cats had limos, limousines, you know what I'm saying? They had fine women. They were like producing dudes, like people from all over, you know what I'm saying? California connections and whatnot. So I ended up living in, I went to Oakland Bay area, Alameda, and Hayward, spent a summer in Hayward, you know what I'm saying? And then after I was down there in the Bay area, I decided, because, you know what I'm saying, my crew, you know, we were in touch, and I was like, yo, man, it's time for me to come back, man, up north. So I went back up north, left California Bay area, and did what I did down there, and then reconnected. And so back in the day, the homie, KB, you know what I'm saying, my homie Kevin Burns, man, little man, you know, man, he rest in peace, R.I.P. He'd been in California, man, and he came up north, and he put us on, you know what I'm saying, to Pyru, you feel me? And that's how we got down, you know what I mean? That's how we connected, you know what I'm saying, to LA. And before that, man, there were a lot of Crips, you know what I mean, in my neighborhood, and there were only a handful of Bloods. There have been Bloods to the south in the Puget Sound, you know what I'm saying, scattered here and there. But man, back when I was, 14, 15 years old, 13, 14, 15 years old, the migration of gangs migrating outward from California, a lot of the gang activity in the town that I come from, it was largely Crip gang activity mixed in with other gangs. So there was a lot of Crip influence back then. I was never a Crip. I never affiliated officially with Crip. I knew some dudes. I used to smoke weed with them, you know what I mean? But I never claimed Crip. I was never officially actually Crip. I never got courted in, you know what I'm saying, or beat into Crip. So I was never actually Crip. And then I met these other cats who I used to play sports with, and one of the older brothers, you know what I'm saying, the big homie, you know what I'm saying, R.I.P. Solo, you know what I'm saying, he put us on, you know what I'm saying, the homies, man, from my neighborhood, Riverside, which was his neighborhood as well, like Young Chili, he had been going out to different cities and whatnot because he was slightly older than us. So he was already on and had been on, you know what I'm saying, with the Samoans, you know what I'm saying, because my Samoan homies, they're the ones who put us on, you know what I'm saying, along with KB, Little Man. So, you know what I'm saying, R.I.P. homie Solo, you know what I'm saying, the big homie, R.I.P. the homie, you know what I'm saying, KB, Kevin Burns, Little Man, you know what I'm saying, those were the homies, man. And that's real shit. So back in the day, when you had previously had Crips, Serenos, Drifters, a lot of blue flaggers, it was a turning point. It was pivotal when Bloods started to gain traction in the Pacific Northwest. Because then certain blood sets that had existed for some time but that were spread out and disparate, they started to come together and ally and increase in size, scope, magnitude, numbers. And it was a phenomenon like you saw out here on the East Coast. But keep in mind, this was before you heard about East Coast Bloods in the way that you did on the documentaries that you did. So the Bloods that I'm affiliated with, that I grew up with, my neighborhood, those Bloods gangs from the West Coast originally, they do business differently than a lot of the Bloods out here on the East Coast. And again, keep in mind, before Bloods gangs out here on the East Coast really gained traction and really started to expand and increase in size and scope and magnitude as had already happened out on the West Coast, we were on that West Coast wave. We were on the West Coast where Bloods are from originally. So I'm just putting this out there. On the West Coast where I come from, it's different. It's different than out here on the East Coast. Where I come from, you have some very unusual interactions among different organizations. Traditionally, in Chicago, folks and Bloods don't get along. In my neighborhood, you had Gangster Disciples, GDs, Black Gangster Disciples, BGDs. You had cats who were G's who actually got along with Bloods. And I'm not saying that there was an alliance or that there is. I'm just saying that traditionally in the Puget Sound is different. And I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying there are some neighborhoods that do and did. And that's unlike other parts of the country. So we had a lot of interesting dynamics out west going on that you wouldn't see a lot of times, man, on the East Coast. Because on the East Coast, cats on the East Coast who are Bloods affiliated, many of them, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them, man, they throw up the 5. Where I come from, we don't throw up the 5. I'm just saying that. You feel me? Like, I'm just being real about that. Now, when I lived in Chicago, I knew some cats, you know what I'm saying? Because I lived in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about Bloods, but I'm talking about 5s. So the point is that on the East Coast is different. Okay? So, you know what I'm saying? I know people, you know what I'm saying? But where I come from, you feel me? The neighborhood that I come from, it's a lot of Bloods and folks. And that's just history. That's just how it is. My homies, man, from childhood, it's just like any movie. You know what I'm saying? Some cats are Bloods, some cats are Crips, some cats are this and that, And I can't speak for everyone. I'm just saying that people, and folks know who they are. You feel that? And I'm just saying where I'm from, Bloods that I know don't throw up the 5. So, man, just a lot of gangsters where I come from, man. Just a lot of G's, man. Just a lot of B-Dogs, a lot of C-Dogs, a lot of 13 Serranos, a lot of 14s Norteños, and different alliances that you wouldn't see ordinarily in other parts of the country. So yeah, man, that's just the nature of where I come from, man. That's just the reality of life out west, man. And you know what I'm saying, the streets and shit that we grew up on, man. So, I guess the way we just kind of looked at it when we were kids, man, it was like you played sports and you were on a football team, and then as an adult, man, if you were going to live in your neighborhood and be walking around your fucking neighborhood, man, you either fucking join up with the crew, man, or you were going to encounter some dudes from crews. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, man, like, the fucking neighborhoods that I come from, man, if you was walking around the neighborhoods that I'm fucking from, man, the streets that I'm from, that I've lived on when I was a fucking kid, if you walking around, man, at nighttime, dude, and you ain't part of some shit, man, you ain't part of some gang, man, you ain't fucking in a gang. I'm not telling anyone who's a minor to join a gang. I'm saying back during the era that I grew up in, the fucking streets, man, there's a part of our town, we call it the dark side. It's called the dark side. It's the dark side of the riverside. So not only is it the riverside, but there's the dark side of the riverside. And man, I'm not going to get into any type of paranormal shit, but yo, look, man, I'm just saying, like, We had gangs from every one of the 50 states that wanted to come to our town because they could sell crack cocaine and make a higher profit. That is more of a profit in our city than any motherfucking where else. And we had to fight them dudes from all 50 motherfucking states when we were kids in terms of turf and whatnot. Okay? So we allied ourselves with older dudes that were already in the fucking game. You got to understand, man, our neighborhood, it's not an excuse. I'm saying it's a fact that our neighborhood was under siege. It really fucking was. There used to be community groups that would meet up, organizations, and they would have private, confidential, secret meetings in basements of like the public library. And I met this cat who was a former Chicago gang member turned boxer who got married, and he became a gang interventionist. So he used to let me in on the meetings, and I would listen, man, like the whole city was talking about the shit. Because, man, the era that I'm from, if you were out late night walking around in the town that I'm fucking from, you was finna run into some gangster shit. Some gang members. I'm talking motherfuckers rolling hella deep. Man, I'm not even condoning it, man. NWA the movie is one of the greatest hip-hop, rap, urban music industry movies of all time. Right up there with Belly. Right up there with Menace to Society. Right up there with Boys in the Hood. There's other fucking stories. There are other fucking towns. There are other stories. There are other fucking towns. Man, look, California is one state on the West Coast. You've got Oregon. You've got Washington. You know what I'm saying? You've got Vancouver, British Columbia, which is a Canadian province. Niggas is banging up in Canada too. Motherfuckers from the U.S. went up to Canada and vice versa. I started some shit with some niggas up in Canada. So, you know what I'm saying? And put them on the label. You know what I'm saying? And they connected us to their, you know what I'm saying? The folks that they fuck with up there and vice versa. So, and that's official business. That's legit fucking business. I put out Secret Society. I put out Doug Crawford and Aaron Loy. I did that with my fucking crew. Yeah, that's right. Aeon did that shit. The homies, my niggas that I grew up with, Chili and them. We put them on. And that's real fucking talk. That's irrefutable. That is incontrovertible. That cannot be fucking disputed in any way, shape, or form. When Doug and them were brand new and they just started rapping and they were doing underground diss and whatnot, they came to me. They came to my spot when I had the spot where Chili would slide through and the homie Scheme, you know what I'm saying? Back when it was Little Scheme, you know what I'm saying? We were younger back then. You know what I'm saying? I was in my 20s back then. So imagine how young Scheme was back then. Like, Scheme and we lived right around the corner, literally like a block, not even a block. We were on the same block, just on opposite sides of the fence. Chili would come through. The homie Corey, R.I.P., rest in peace, Corey. You know what I'm saying? Beaudry, the homie. You feel me? Man, look, so many cats, man. Little Noopy would slide through, okay? And I used to do business in and out of Seattle and the Puget Sound, EVT, Tacoma. Homies from Tacoma. Niggas from Martin Luther King, South End. Isaac Grayson in there. That's real fucking talk. That's real shit. Isaac is the one who introduced me to DWC, Down with the Crew. So, on the real, back in the day, man, you know, man, we had alliances, man. You know, we weren't cool with everyone. You know what I'm saying? There's niggas beefing and shit. Man, you know, we squashed some of them beefs, you know. I just said, hey, man, let bygones be bygones and shit. You know what I'm saying? You know, we used to beef with some other Bloods niggas and shit. You know, from Seattle and whatnot. Because we're not from fucking Seattle. I'm not from fucking Seattle. But I would go to Seattle, and I knew Bloods niggas in Seattle. You know, I knew niggas from other gangs and other sets, and sometimes we was cool, sometimes we wasn't. You know what I'm saying? But my crew, man, when we rolled up in Seattle from the EVT, we were always respectful. We always came, man, fucking equipped. Like we were young ballers, man. And that's why we got recruited to come to the Central District to record music in the CD with Darkset, with Robert Redwine and them. You know what I'm saying? They ain't just gonna fuck with anybody. You know what I'm saying? They ain't just gonna fuck with anybody. Like they saw how we were doing it. You know what I'm saying? I had the house on 23rd Street, the fucking spot. And, man, I had my homies from childhood, man. We had that fucking block. We had not just the block. We had the whole radius on lock. So, I'm just saying, man, like, that's how we got started in the rap game. And that's a fucking fact of U.S. American history. I'm your boy, Once or Grove, OSGOE. We're legacy systems.